Chapter 5, Episode 13. There was a conversation going on for several minutes that was a reaction to one of the stories written by a reluctant to admit the solar system was heliocentric Christian student. Somehow the conversation slipped away from writing style and clarity to the validity of Christianity. Sally almost always resisted the urge to participate in the class debates that often sprung up. She liked watching them, picking out the clever ideas and the brain-dead babbles. But after being raised by a chain-smoking wino Mormon and just getting back from a dusty version of hell, she was already irritated, not quite in full control. She said something. She didn't remember what she said. It was almost like snapping something at Billy, just a pissed-off reaction. But it led to the word, the demand for respect. For a worn-out murderous death cult. No, I shouldn't. Why would I show respect for a belief in a protagonist that called himself God based on unoriginal hack stories mimicking astrology written by well-off madmen who are in bed with the emperors, whatever they were called, with full intention to keep the poor ignorant and obedient? What? You have been brain raped by stories you don't understand. You say Lot was a great man. He was a whiny bitch that raped his virgin daughters after trying to get the townsfolk to gang rape them. Moses had hundreds of sex slaves whose parents had been murdered. You have made the most horrible characters into the greatest heroes, and it seems to be an ongoing trend. History books are full of mass-murdering tyrants who, we are told, are great. We talk of great empires. Empires are all about a few elite keeping slaves or working-class peasants to build a system that shines with gold and diamonds but is stained by blood and poverty. Professor Johnson was trying to contain a smile. He loved it when Sally actually made it to his class, and to see her finally burst out with her view really excited him. There were a few Christians and Muslims in the class. Professor Johnson knew they would still have their religions no matter how much anyone told them they were holding to old fables. They were convinced anyone not in their club was not only an idiot, but destined to serve eternity in hell, being tortured to death 12 times a day and 13 on Sunday. The class was over and a few had already left, but a few stayed to have it out with Sally. Professor Johnson was impressed with her knowledge of religions and history. She was not a normal student. She was a freak, beautiful freak, a wild, dangerous creature. Eventually they all left but Sally, who sat and contemplated her outburst. Sally looked up at Professor Johnson. Sorry. Don't be sorry. I sometimes think I should be quiet since I'm not paying for going to the school. America, land of the free. I don't know a professor that has a problem with someone who sits in on a class. People pay so they can get a diploma or some letters on their name. People who sit in are usually the most curious and interested in learning, the freaks of nature that professors love to see. Here is one that could actually do something, and he or she has chosen to sit in on my class. A sit-in is a compliment to the professor. Sally laughed. The professor was getting excited. Can I ask a non sequitur? Professor Johnson smiled. He adored Sally. He tried not to show it too much. Why did your parents call you John? Professor Johnson laughed. Why not? John Johnson? Is that like John's son? John, son of John? Not such an uncommon name. I'll tell you how it happened. When I was 12, my parents died in a car crash. My aunt adopted me, her and her husband. I was John Steinbeck before being adopted. They wanted me to have their name. What? Steinbeck? Like the upset grapes? The professor had to laugh. Distant relation. Grandfather's uncle or something. But my mother was an English literature professor. It's part of the reason I became an English professor. She gave me the love of literature. Sally thought about it. How long had they been, what would you call it, lovers? And she knew very little about him. Okay, Sally. I have another class. Do you have any plans for tonight? I'll read some papers and leave my window open. Sally smiled and sat for another few minutes after John Johnson was gone. Then she got up and headed toward Melvin C. Hazen Park. She wondered what might be a nice place to visit. A cafe for a coffee or a trip? They hadn't been anywhere for days. Maybe somewhere quiet. Billy could fuck off and make friends with while Sally wrote a story. Then he could cook her dinner or find a great place to eat. She had been so caught up in her vague plans that she almost ran into some thugs. She guessed that they were Christians because her outspoken rant was focused towards a Christian. The thugs were waiting for Sally just off campus. Maybe they had been following her, or someone else was and told them where to wait. Sally saw no one from the class. She might have been able to avoid the three horseless men of her prophesied apocalypse. It would have meant running. She could outrun them. That instinct didn't speak to her. If it had, it would have said, "Not interested. Deal." She saw the amateur hitmen watching for her and saw them talking on their smart devices, making certain it was her. She would have to warn them that they would be messing with the wrong bitch. But she had a sore spot for pricks that even thought to mess with women because they believed they could. She stopped herself from going through the history of inhuman treatment of women. She was calm. She didn't really want to hurt anyone, at least a part of her that was likely listening to the logic of Billy. If she could just explain to them that if they ever approached a woman to threaten them in any way, she would bust their balls. She wondered if that could make a fun comic. Sally the Ball Buster. She would talk to Billy about it. She laughed. No, she wouldn't. Oh, maybe she would. What's so funny? I was just thinking of a story for a comic. It's called Sally the Ball Breaker. She busts balls. A superhero thing. You really are a lunatic. From your point of view, I'm sure you think that's true. I could explain to you why your perspective is too narrow to build any kind of logical examination of my mental state. But you don't want to know that. You have something else you want to tell me. I can't imagine all three of you want to ask me to a dance. Can you shut the fuck up? I can, but it isn't to anyone's advantage. I'm less likely to hurt someone who might think they have something to tell me that I've fucking heard already. Happened before. But there were 6 of them that time. You were only 3. Maybe I will stop talking. You're the Antichrist whore fucking retard that can't keep her fucking mouth shut. This is a Christian country, and if you have a problem with that, you can go back to hell where you came from. I won't even bother telling you how wrong you are. Just advise you to do some research. Do you ever try to make sense? Are you done? I can't waste any more time with morons. My therapist says. Makes me crazy. I hit people. Life is just too short to be fighting. Piss off. Sally tried to wave them away like a fly in her face. Diplomacy was definitely Billy's thing. She was pretty good at it sometimes. Even most times. Just not all times. You must apologize and recant your blasphemy. Sally had a little laugh. She wasn't even certain she had heard correctly. She was tuning out and couldn't listen to individual words. Get the fuck out of my face or I will hurt you. She expressed herself seriously. She started to walk away knowing they couldn't let her go. She was far too ahead on points. She noticed someone watching. They had a smart device pointed her way. You can back off and I will just keep walking. Then we won't have any serious problems. I really am supposed to stay out of trouble. We don't want trouble, do we? Don't stand in my way and don't touch me, and I'll let you go with a warning. Sally was ready for a crisis. She would have been disappointed had it dissipated. She had no difficulty with 3 fighters in the virtual world. She wanted to see how it played out in the real world. The one life world. You aren't going anywhere. You need to learn some respect. Respect cannot be taught. You are so wrong. She looked at the other two. Who's next? She made to step away and get slapped hard across the face. She let it happen. It was a hit she could have blocked, but she wanted a black eye or a scratch, for the record. There were few more witnesses that had noticed the filming of an upcoming event, so they get their smart devices pointed as well. This is so fucked, she smiled and waited. Indignation. That's what they were fighting for. The right to be violently offended when told their bullshit was bullshit. Beating, gang rape, maybe burning on a cross. How far would they go for their beliefs? Their old fucking idiotic death cult. He slapped her harder. Sally was pumped. Sally punched him so hard, so fast in the stomach that he screamed. He was tough and didn't fall over, but the surprise left him stunned long enough for Sally to punch him 3 times in the face. When he tried to grab her, she broke his elbow. When the next one grabbed from behind, she swung her elbow up into his face. After that, she kept swinging and being positively brutal. When she noticed how much fun she was having and how much damage she was causing, she tried not to smile and left. She didn't wave to any cameras.